Hello, I'm Mark Tucker.
Hey, I'm Alan Furstenberg. Welcome back to Two Voice Devs.
Two Voice Devs.
So this is actually a little bit funny. This episode is going to be a little weird and a little short, but kind of what happened is at the last recording session that we had, um, we finished the recording and then started talking in general, like you and I always do.
We do, yeah.
And we got on the subject of retrieval augmented generation. And we thought then to hit the record button so would record this. And I think you kind of started it off with a question. How did you put it?
Yeah, I was just talking about just how sometimes it feels a little overwhelming, and even though you know concepts, sometimes you still forget terms. Because we talked about, and we'll talk about this in this episode, but we talked about vector databases and how you can talk to your documents and things like that. And when we first started out, we didn't know what to call it, and then
Right.
now it's been termed. Let me see if I get this now. Retrieval Augmented Generation. But I told her, I remembered RAG, but I couldn't always remember what RAG stood for. So then we started having this conversation, and
So let's go back several minutes and see what we talked about. So RAG is retrieval augmented generation. And kind of the key thing to remember about it is that the retrieval part, although usually when we talk about retrieval, we're talking about it in terms of generated embedding and search in a vector database to find the nearest neighbors and pull out, it doesn't have to be. All it really means is get the information somehow. Now, when and so when we talked, for example, about when we looked at my my entry for the VoiceFlow hackathon, the first thing that it was doing was using an LLM to turn what you said into a formula,
right,
and then retrieving the answer from a spreadsheet. That's the retrieval part.
Right. That's true.
When I do presentations on it these days, I talk about taking what we've just said, putting it into a prompt that includes a database schema, and turning it into an SQL query and running the query to get an answer, retrieving the answer from a database.
Right.
Okay?
So the retrieval can use or does not have to use a vector database, use, but does not have to use the LLM itself.
Right. The way I like to think of it is the retrieval part is taking a fuzzy human statement, like I've said before, and turning it into a discrete object. Whether that discrete object is an SQL query, whether it's a formula, whether it's a set of embeddings, whatever. I've now turned it into something discrete that the computer, the traditional programming can understand. Or it could be, as we've discussed, in a previous episode, turn it into a type data structure, whatever. But then using the query, the type, the data structure, the embeddings, whatever, to find answers, an answer or answers, and then take those answers, take the original question, and put those into a new prompt to generate a response. And that's where the G in retrieval augmented generation comes from.
All right.
You're getting the information. You're basically saying, here's the question, here's the answer, summarize that for me. Or, here's the question, here's some data, answer the question based on the data.
Based on the data, yeah.
That's what your prompt kind of looks like. So that's the generation part of retrieval augmented generation.
So it's using the built-in NLU capabilities of the LLM plus data that you get from someplace.
Right.
To answer a question. Yeah.
Right. As Noble likes to put it, it's grounding your LLM in the truth, and you're defining the truth.
Yeah.
You're giving it the grounding information.
But what if your truth is really urban legends and conspiracy theories?
Right. Well, I mean, I suppose
that's your data. Truth. Yeah. Right. It's grounding it in the answers the data that you want to be seen as the truth.
Right. Well, it's truth in a particular context.
Yes.
Whether or not it is a global truth is another question that we're not going to address. I think the acronym is a terrible acronym. The name is a little bit weak. But the concept is incredibly solid.
Yeah.
That we're seeing lots and lots of people using it these days.
Well, when we first started, they did not even have a name for it.
Actually, it's interesting. I went and looked at the original paper for Retrieval Augmented Generation.
Yeah.
2019.
Seriously. So they had already named it, but it just kind of took as new groups of people were coming on board with learning LLMs. It took us a little while to get to the point where we knew what the thing was named.
Right. And the paper's argument was not, the paper doesn't talk about embeddings anywhere. It really just says that, we are answering this by inserting the facts that we want to into the prompt. It doesn't say where we get those facts from or how we get those. It just says, we insert it as part of the prompt.
Yeah. So RAG is as a pattern is kind of founded on the prompt, and then the data that you put into the prompt is retrieved some way.
Well,
from somewhere.
It's two. I think this is something that a lot of people kind of miss, is that it's two prompts under the way we handle the pattern now. We use one prompt to turn fuzzy human into discrete digital, and then a second prompt to turn discrete digital plus the original human prompt into the response.
That's right. It has to evaluate the initial the prompt once to try to figure out what is the corpus of knowledge that it even pertains to. You can't put everything into the prompt.
Well, right.
And so you have to figure out how to filter that to the most relevant stuff, which is why vector databases make a lot of sense.
Which is why vector databases were right.
But yeah, but in the end, it really is just, if you had some sort of keyword matching or simple regex that would say, oh, these were the things that you could use that to, whatever it is.
Right. It's whatever makes sense. I mean, but you can even see a third prompt in some cases where the first prompt is filling out a data structure with things like optional time range, optional set of knowledge to retrieve from, optional, or are we talking about books, or are we talking about records, or are we talking about movies, and then once you have that, what is the rest of the question? What are the other, what is the query?
Yeah. And
then feed that query into an embedding system and so forth, and use the rest as additional filters on it.
So you could filter based on metadata,
right?
And then
right,
do the embeddings for closeness,
right? So having that additional prompts in there also makes sense in some environments.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
I was just like, that was just this conversation just started because I'm like, I know what it is, but it's just kind of like there's so much keeping this stuff in my head that I'm like, I know what RAG does, but I can't remember what RAG stands for all the time.
Right. No. And in some ways, I'm not always big on, who cares what the name of it is? What is it? What does it do? Yeah. But this is one that just keeps getting mentioned more and more these days because it is so popular.
Yeah.
And it's so common. It's really, I think right now, I feel like it's one of the most common applications that we're seeing out there right now.
Yeah.
Is, you see a bunch of things that are, help you write a creative prompt to do whatever, or a creative email to do whatever. But we're seeing a lot more of, store your document and retrieve it, ask questions of your documentation.
Yeah. And I see a number of businesses that are like, we will help you create a chatbot that talks to your website, or that talks to your,
right. Yeah. Well,
your HR documents, or that talks to your, whatever it is. Right.
Right. I think that what's funny to me in some ways is that Google actually has a product that does this now. There's the what they call Vertex AI search and conversation,
Yep.
where you're basically you give it data sets, it indexes those data sets, and you can then create a chatbot and ask questions of your data set. And under the covers, it's using embeddings. It's using more than embeddings, but it's using embeddings. Once you have this data set, you can, give it a prompt so that you can search that data set, just like you can search through Google and get documents back. It will give you documents back. And then you take it another step and say, well, okay, now generate the chatbot based on these documents.
Yeah.
And it creates a Dialogflow chatbot that has a generative AI response system as part of it as well, to give answers to questions. And that's practically right out of the box.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a lot of people looking at these sorts of things. And yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting.
Yeah, and we've come a long ways in the last year.
Yeah, we have.
As we've just kind of, chatbots were chatbots, and they've been around for a long time, and now it's like, this is how easy it is to talk to your own data, to do a chatbot that's specifically to your data.
Right, and I think what's neat is that, and we're going to see this in other systems eventually, I'm sure. VoiceFlow is doing very similar stuff as well.
Yeah.
Is, with Dialogflow, you can say things, you can still have your usual conversation flow system that we've kind of gotten used to.
Yeah.
But also say, instead of a fallback intent in this section of the flow, here are the documents that you can reference to answer questions. So you can be guiding them through a home, a mortgage application process, say. And you've got stuff that needs to be filled in, and you're prompting them and going through chains. And suddenly they may ask a question about what one of the terms means, or what are the implications of this, or whatever.
Yeah.
And if you don't have that built in the flow, it can now reference your set of documents about that about what applications are like, or whatever. So that I don't know. I think that's pretty cool and pretty powerful.
Yeah, it is. It is. It's kind of a fun time just to see how quickly things are iterating.
Yep. So love to hear what people have to think about retrieval augmented generation, or what similar patterns you are working with, and talk about them with us. We love to talk about these sorts of things, and you never know where the conversation goes.
That's true.
Two Voice Devs.
Two Voice Devs. Take care.
Take care. Have a great week.
Thank you.